Okay, so today we're going to be working on the assignment. So we're focusing on ellipses. I gave you a bunch of formulas yesterday. You can use the formulas. Again, I'm into patterns. I like to look at the patterns and see and use that information to help me. So let's go ahead. Let's go to our first example, our first problem. So this one says, which statements are true about the ellipse? So before I even go through and read it, like I kind of want to get out some of the important information on that. Like, what am I looking at? What do I know from this picture? So I know that this is my center. So don't get confused when I label my center with a C. That's not the same C when we talk about C squared is equal to A squared minus B squared. That C to get us our foci, that's not the same C. This is just C as in the center of the ellipse. Excuse me. So if I look at the center of my ellipse, this point right here is going to be at 2, -1. Perfect. Now remember, when we talk about the A and the B value, that's the distance from the center. A is always the larger distance, the one that's further away. And so when I look here, I can see that these 2 points are further from my center than these 2 points. The furthest ones away are always my vertices. These are my vertices. Then these 2 that are closer to the center are my co-vertices. The distance, again, the distance from the center to the vertices, so this distance here is my A value, and in this case that distance is a distance of 4, and I could just count it 1, 2, 3, 4 away. The distance from my center to my co-vertices, that's always that B value. The B value in this case, it's a value of 3. It's a value of 3. Now if I look here, my A is going up and down, so that's parallel to the y-axis, so that A value is going to be under the y value because it goes up and down. My B value is going to be under the x because it's going left and right. That's always going to be the case because remember, it switches the A and the B depending on which direction the ellipse is. Okay, so what are some other things that I have here? Well, remember that my vertices create my major axis. So from my vertice to my vertice, this is what we would call our major axis. The major axis is the longer one. So that's my major axis. My co-vertice to co-vertice, this is what we would call the minor axis. So if I ask what is the length of the major axis, it's 4 here, and it's a distance of 4 here. It's an A and an A, right? So the whole thing would be 2 A's or 8. So let's go ahead. Let's start reading through. What are some of the things that they're talking about here? What is true? So first one says, the center is located at 2, -1. Yeah, we've already said that. The major axis is 8 units long. So it's 4 units plus another 4 units. That is true. The major axis is 8 units long. The minor axis, this is 3 here, and this would be another 3. So the whole thing should be 6. So that is not true, not true. The vertices are 4 units above and below the center, 4 above and 4 below. That is true. The foci are the square root of 7 units above and below the center. So remember, the foci are going to always be on the major axis. So my foci are going to be above and below my center, but is it going to be the square root of 7? I don't know. It's not on my graph. But remember, that's what we use that C value for. So if I want to figure out what that C is that C going to be the square root of 7? I know that my A was 4 squared, my B is 3 squared. So I have C squared is equal to 16 minus 9. C squared is equal to 7. Take the square root, and C is equal to the square root of 7. So we are going, oops, sorry, you guys. So we are going from my foci, to get to my foci, from my center, I would go up the square root of 7 and down the square root of 7. So this is true. This is true. And the last one says the foci are located along the horizontal line, along a horizontal line. Horizontally would be left and right. That is not true. It's vertically. So this is incorrect. This should be vertical. So again, when I see these type of problems, I like to kind of label stuff on my graph right away. See, what do I know? What do I have? And kind of go from there. Personal preference. You could go just down the list and mark it. All righty. My next one. So this one says, an ellipse is represented by my equation here, where it says, where are the foci of the ellipse located? Okay, so that's what we need to figure out, is where the foci is located. And again, I like to always sketch a little graph. So here's what I know. This value is my H and my K. Remember, it's always the opposite signs. So that's going to give me my center is going to be at -5, +7. I always like to label the H and K because the H always goes with the X. If this would have been a Y first, sometimes you automatically want to write that as your H value, and that's not the case. So be careful. That's probably the #1 mistake, is that you switch these two because your X and your Y coordinates were switched up here. Okay, so I know where my center is, and pictures, you know, I like to see the graphs, the visuals of it. So if I have a graph in my center, it's going to be at -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5, and up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -5, 7. Here's my center. Okay. Here's what else I know. Okay, I know this piece right here, this is my A squared. This piece is my B squared. Remember, my A squared is always going to be the bigger one. So my A squared is 625. So if my A squared is equal to 625, then A is going to equal 25, right? So from my center, A, it's under my X, so I'm going in the X direction. I would go 25 to the left to get to my vertice, and this isn't going to be to scale. And I would go 25, this is going to be 25 to the right, not to scale, to get my other vertice. So this is definitely not to scale, so ignore the left and right, but this is in a distance of 25. I would have to go 25 each way to get my vertices because my A is 25. My B is going to be 7, so I would go up 7 to get my co-vertices, and I would go down 7. Again, this is not to scale, I shouldn't have even numbered it, to get my other co-vertices. So just to kind of see, all I'm doing is counting the directions of these values to get all the points. Okay, so if that's the case, if this is the case, I know that my foci, it wants me to figure out where my foci are. I know that my foci have to be on my major axis. So from vertice to vertice, my foci have to be on this axis. If that's the case, remember, my Y would be 7 at this point. So my foci values are going to be, my Y value is going to have to be 7 because it has to be on this horizontal line, has to be 7. So I know that right away, which means those two aren't even an option. But I need to figure out where is that foci at, and the foci is C distance from the center. What is C? C squared is equal to my A squared minus my B squared, A squared, B squared. So C squared is equal to 625 minus 49. C squared is equal to 576. Then C is going to be 24. The square root of 576 is 24. Okay, so what does this mean? My center, again, this is at -5 right here. This point is here at -5, 7. And if I want to figure out my foci, I need to go to the left. My C value of 24. So I'm going to go left 24, and I'm going to go right 24. So if I'm here at -5, I'm at -5, and I want to go to the left 24. I'm going in the negative direction 24. That's going to put me at -29 for that X value. That's going to put me here then at -29. And if I'm going to go to the right, I'm going to start at my -5, and I'm going to add 24, and that's going to put me at 19 for my other foci. So these would be the 2 points. Did I write? I did write negative. So those are the 2 points. So again, notice the y values all stayed the same because they're on that same horizontal line. I'm counting from where this x value is. From this point, I'm at -5 and I need to go -24 and I need to go +24 to get these 2 points. Questions on that? Questions? Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna flip. All right, let's look at our next example. Okay. So let's look at the information they gave us. So we have an ellipse that has vertices along the major axis so here's where our vertices are. So they gave me my vertices. The foci are at these 2 values. What are the values of A, B, H, and K? So what is the equation basically going to be? I want to figure out the pieces so I can create the equation. So again, let's start off with what do we know? Let's put these points into the graph. Okay, so I know at 0, 8, and 0, -2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8, 6, -2. All right, and then let's go left and right. We'll just go 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so 0, 8, I have a vertice, and 0, -2, I have a vertice. I also have a foci at 0, 7 and at 0, -1. Well, directly in the middle of the foci and directly in the middle of my vertices has to be the center, has to be the center. So I need to figure out, well, what's the center? So if I go from -2 to 8, there's a difference of 10. So halfway would be my 5, right? So if I count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right here would have to be my center at 0, 3. So from here to here, from my center to my vertice, that's my A value, has to be a value of 5. From my center to my foci is my C value, and in this case, it's a value of 4, right? So just from figuring out the center, I now know my H and my K value, right? Just from figuring out the center, I know H and K. So I know that my H is going to be 0. I know that K is going to be 3. I also know A because I was able to count from my center to my vertice. So I also know that my A is equal to 5. The only thing we're missing is my B value. I don't know where my co-vertices are, so I can't just count it. But what we do know is that C squared is equal to A squared minus B squared. We've come to this formula every problem so far. So I know my A, I know my C, so I could find that unknown B. In other words, 4 squared is equal to 5 squared minus my B squared. So 16 is equal to 25 minus B squared. I'm going to go ahead and add a B squared to both sides, subtract 16 from both sides, and I end up with B squared is equal to 9, which tells me then that B is going to be the value of 3. So over here, I would have A is 5, B was 3, H was 0, and K was 3. Now remember, if it asked me to write this as an equation, number one mistake, and I was trying to warn you guys about the last time, notice how the Y and the X are switched. Sometimes you guys just want to plug it in as a 0 here and a 3 here because it's just in order. That's not the case. So for this, if I was asked for the equation, it would actually look like this. You would have Y minus 3 squared all over my A squared, which would be 25. And then it'd be plus, it'd be X minus 0, so it'd just be an X squared all over my 3 squared, which is 9, is equal to 1. So this would be the actual equation, but be careful because so often you guys just want to do HK, but they're switched in this case because Y is written first. All right, and then I have one more. This is my last one for the day. So it says, an ellipse is a vertex at 14, -1. The focus of the ellipse nearest that vertex is located at 8, -1. If the center of the ellipse is at -1, -1, what is the equation of the directrix on that side of the ellipse? Some of you guys are like, I have no idea what they're even talking about. Like, this is so much words and stuff. So again, I highly encourage you guys just to sketch. Do you notice how I'm not drawing full graphs? I'm just kind of putting the information down so I can see, well, what do I have? What's my picture looking like? Okay, so I have a vertex at 14, 1. So I'm just gonna label as we need be. So 14, -1, here's my 14. This right here is a vertex at 14, -1. The focus of the ellipse nearest that vertex, so the focus that's closest to this vertex is at 8, -1. So I'm gonna go here at 8, -1, and I have my focus. So I've got this on my graph, I've got this on my graph. If the center of the ellipse is at -1, 1, so here's my center, what is the directrix? Okay, so we haven't talked about directrix yet today for this one. So here's what I do know. My center, of course, is my HK value. So I'm here at -1, 1. This is my HK. The distance from my center to my focus, that distance is my C value. So C is equal to, oh, sorry, I did it as 1, 1. It's -1, -1. This is my fault. This is a -1. I just didn't read it right. I might have said it right. So my center is going to be here. That is totally my fault. My center is at -1, -1. They're both negatives. I did it at 1, -1. So let's fix that because obviously I'll make my numbers off. So my center to my focus, this is our C value. So how far away is this center to the focus? This is going to be a distance of 9. So 8 plus that extra 1, that's telling me my C is equal to 9. The distance from my center to my vertex, this distance here is my A value. A is always to my vertex, and that's going to be a distance of 15. Okay, so it asked me, where is my directrix? And here's how I figure out my directrix. To find my directrix, I need that D value. So the D value one goes with the directrix. And that value is A squared all over C. And I know from the information that they gave me here, they didn't say, hey, A is this or C is this, but I can easily count just from plotting the points on my graph. And when I do that, then I get A squared, which is 15 squared all over 9 is going to be 225 all over 9. And 225 divided by 9 is just 25. So what this tells me is my directrix is going to be from my center, and it would be in both directions, just like these would be in both directions. We're only focusing on this half of the ellipse. So I would also have C that goes 9 in this direction, and I would have my A that goes in this direction, but we're only focusing around the right side of the ellipse. So then to figure out the directrix, it's from my center. So again, from my center, my directrix is going to be D away. And in this case, that D value is 25. So if I'm here at -1 and I want to go this direction, 25, I want to add 25 to that. That's going to put my directrix here at 24, right? And if it's a 24 and it's going through the x-axis, it has to be at x is equal to 24. And this is the equation that they're looking for. It's x is equal to 24. So I would have a directrix here. I would also have had a directrix that went negative 25. So if I was going to go to the left and I wanted to figure out my directrix, that would be at x is equal to negative 26. So negative 25 and my negative 1. So it would also be at negative 26, but they wanted the one that's by this vertex. So I thought it was a good problem. You only need to focus in on half of it. So this is only half of the ellipse. We didn't have the whole other half because it wasn't necessary. Do I have questions? So again, important formulas, your D, your C, those are like the two main formulas you'll need to use for this information. So C is to get you to the foci, D is to get you to the directrix. If you guys come up with any questions throughout the day, just send me a message on Remind. Otherwise, you guys have a fabulous day and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.